today and being a part. Since we've been doing the shouting and the chants, my voice is not in the best and most pristine condition, but bear with me as we go through this. I will be singing His Eyes on the Sparrow, the rendition by Lauren Hill. Why should I feel discouraged? Why should the shadows come? Why should my heart feel lonely and long for heaven and home when Jesus is my portion?
James Major Woodall join us in Thank you.
I want to take an opportunity to not only honor the spirit of our now ancestors as we continue on in this journey called freedom and justice and liberty for all of God's people. It is not by mistake that you are here right now. And though we may be in a very interesting moment where everybody is having to experience life in ways that we've never experienced before, one thing I can tell you is that we are now stronger together than we are ever apart. And that's important for us. It's important because we are currently in a war for our lives. And every breath that we take is an opportunity for us to get it right yet once more again. And so as we leave this place today, and we commit and recommit ourselves to this struggle, we need to understand that we need to remind ourselves every single day that this is bigger than us as individuals. There's an ethic in the African tradition called Ubuntu, where it suggests that I cannot be all that I can be until you are all that you can be. And in English, it basically says, I am because we are. And so as we encourage our ethic as community to say that we will stand together, that no more names, right? Men, women, boy, and girl, it doesn't matter. That we are done dying. Let me say that again. We are done dying. And let's also clarify that this is not an issue about black versus blue, as the media narratives continue to try to perpetuate this lie. This is about human beings losing their lives unjustly, and then there is no accountability, regardless if it's coronavirus, regardless if it's police brutality, regardless if it's poverty, regardless if it's in access to care. We got hospitals closing all over the place. And seemingly nobody wants to do anything about it. And so we have to move beyond this conversation of Republican versus Democrat, black versus white versus blue, poor versus rich. We are all humanity. And when we stand together, shoulder to shoulder, arm to arm, even during the coronavirus pandemic, that we begin to lift up our voices and declare what is right, what is just, what is true, but most of all, what is divine. And I genuinely believe that one day we may be dead and gone, but we will be able to look down the corridors of glory and shout, because maybe we didn't see it in our lifetime, but we saw our children and our children's children experience this promise called freedom. And so until now, until then, we will continue to fight, because those who believe in freedom cannot what? Rest until it comes. And so we will not rest. We will not take one day off. Because the moment we stop fighting, there's going to be another life lost, and we will too have blood on our hands. And so we are committed to the struggle. We're committed to our people. We are committed to this city, this state, this country, this world. Every single breath called life, we will protect it. Because that's what we were sitting here to do. So freedom fighters, recharge, prepare yourselves, because we're going to battle. But only together will we win. And I believe today and forevermore we will overcome. So thank you all so much. God bless you and may God keep you is my prayer. And we look forward to seeing you on the wall.
Pat Hector.
Thank you all for coming out today. Last night, I got a call that a friend of mine who had been an organizer for more than 10 years, that I've known for 9 years, had passed away. And so in remembering these individuals, I'm also remembering David Carter, who organized on the front lines in Baltimore during the Freddie Gray protest, who traveled with me to Ferguson during the Michael Brown rallies. And so in this moment, I also want to remember David Carter and uplift his name and his spirit. But one of the things that touches me deeply, and if you know anything about me, CT Vivian has got to be one of the most amazing individuals in which I know from the civil rights movement, and by far one of the my favorite organizer. CT Vivian was a quiet man, but if you ever had an opportunity to hear him say anything, it was so powerful, and he would always captivate just the space and the rooms in which he was in. Many people talk about Martin Luther King, they talk about the civil rights leaders and activists who are very, very vocal. But many people don't talk about CT Vivian. And I also thought, in speaking with Jared, I didn't know what to really say at a visual during this time when we've lost two great people in our lives. And one of the things that I often regret is not taking full advantage of the moments that I shared in rooms with the both of them. I kind of felt like, as community leaders and activists in this city, you know, we don't realize just the privilege that we have to be able to march alongside people, or have had the opportunity to march alongside people like John Lewis. We didn't understand the privilege that we had to walk and march alongside people like CT Vivian, to sit at tables with them and go to, you know, organizing meetings with them. And, you know, I sat in the car speaking to Jared, and I said, you know, I just hate that I didn't take full advantage of those moments. I didn't take full advantage of those opportunities. And being from here, you know, you always kind of feel like these people will be here forever. And, you know, I had to learn that that's not true. And so he told me the best thing for me to do is talk about one of the best memories that I had with the both of them. I had an opportunity to go to the White House. It was the last Black History Month at that President Barack Obama would be the President of the United States. And he called in a meeting of probably less than 25 people. I had the opportunity to go, and I sat beside CT Vivian and across from John Lewis. And CT Vivian, literally people were crying, like laughing, they were joking, and CT Vivian literally just began to break out in tears. And he began to cry. And then after he began to cry, literally everybody else at the table began to cry. And he said, you know, when I got hit in the face with a baton by a police officer, I never knew that I would be experiencing this moment. You know, in that moment with John Lewis and the fact that they had known each other for so long, they never knew that they would be experiencing that moment. And I say that to say that they honestly got to live amazing and full lives. And the work that they did was not in vain, because they got to see what actually came from that. And I hope that, and I think about my life, and I hope that it's that full. I hope that it's that fulfilling. I hope that I'm able to put my lives on the line right now like they did in my 20s. And when I'm older, I can be able to say, like, I never would have thought that this moment would have happened. I never would have thought that we would make it this far, but we did. And so I just wanted to leave you all with that. They were amazing individuals. They were amazing people. And take what they did and implement it into your own lives. You know, John Lewis probably never thought that he would be a congressman. right? Like marching across that Pettus Bridge. I think that was probably the last thing on his mind. But that just shows you that we have not big shoes to fill, because there will never be another John Lewis, there will never be another C.T. Vivian. But we have to not only just continue their legacy, because their legacy has been set, but I would encourage you to follow in their footsteps and not be afraid to just step out on faith like they did so many times. Thank you, Courtney.
Activist Jared Sawyer Jr.
Thank you so much, Courtney, and thank you, Mary and James. I believe he had to leave for sharing those sentiments, and I just echo in those sentiments. We gather together, as we know, today to honor two great men who are now resting with the ancestors, men who deserve their rest. They deserve their rest, because we oftentimes talk about how they sacrifice their freedom, and they sacrifice their time, and they sacrifice their leisure. We forget or negate the reality that in addition to them sacrificing all of those things, they also sacrificed their bodies. They sacrificed their bodies. They put their bodies on the line so that we may experience some of the freedoms that we do experience today. But even in that, as they live to be 80 years old, Congressman Lewis, 95 years old, Dr. C.T. Vivian, they recognized the fight continues. The fight is not over. The fight is far from over. Until justice rolls down like waters and righteousness like a mighty stream, the fight must continue, and it continues with this generation. As Mayor Pat said, I think we oftentimes took advantage of the fact that these two great men lived in our great city, the city of Atlanta. They walked among us. They served among us in positions of ministry and in positions of Congress. And these two great men, we honor and we revere today because they deserve it. They never saw themselves to be greater than anyone else. They constantly submitted themselves to the least of these, that we may all experience the equity that is due to each and every one of us, and the equality. I want to share with you a comedic piece before sharing with you an intimate piece that I want to bring as my remarks. First, as Mary said, she was sharing what her experiences have been with Dr. C.T. Vivian and Congressman Lewis. I remember about 4 years ago, also in Washington, D.C., I was there to speak at some of the festivities for the Smithsonian Museum of African American History's grand opening. And every time I would go to D.C., I would always check in with Congressman Lewis to see if he was there, because even if he would tell me the same story about the Edmund Pettus Bridge over and over again, I would gain a sense of strength and a new sense of wisdom and understanding each and every time. So I was sitting in his office, and eventually, after we talked for maybe about an hour or so, he said, all right, I have to go. Because if anybody knew Congressman Lewis, they knew that he never got anywhere late unless he had to get there late. So he said, all right, I have to go. I'm like, where are you going? He said, oh, I'm going to the White House. I said, well, what a coincidence. I'm going to the White House. I've got to speak for the Smithsonian Museum grand opening festivity they've got going on there. He said, well, would you like to go with me? I'm like, that would be absolutely amazing. What an honor to go with Congressman Lewis. I'm sitting here thinking that we're getting ready to hop in a black SUV and the whole 9 yards, and we're about to pull up at the White House. And so we start walking, and we're walking, and we're walking, and we're walking down the steps of the Capitol. And I said, Congressman Lewis, where's the car? And he said, oh, no, we're not driving, we're walking. Walking where? Walking to the White House. Oh, okay, cool, sounds good. And you couldn't walk 15 seconds, maybe even 10 seconds, without people losing their absolute mind over the fact that Congressman Lewis was in their presence. We surely took advantage of this man being in the city of Atlanta, being able to see him at galas and inaugurations and installations, and being able to meet with him and see him walk up and down the streets and so on and so forth. He was a true national treasure. And after that experience, I asked him, I said, do you ever get tired of that? Do you ever get tired of so many people coming to you and telling you the same story that you've been telling people for the past 40 years of your activism? And he said, no, why would I? It is an honor to fight for freedom. It is an honor to fight for justice. And I will do whatever I can for as long as I can so that we may experience better. Because he said, America is better than this. And so I leave you with these words. If you did not read them in the New York Times, these are the words of Congressman Lewis. And I just took bits and pieces out of it. And so that way it's not a lengthy experience. But these were the final words that he had to say to this generation as we gather together, majority young people that have taken the baton, picked up the mantle of Congressman Lewis and said, let's march forward. He said, while my time here has now come to an end, I want you to know that in the last days and hours of my life, you inspired me. You filled me with hope about the next chapter of the great American story. When you used your power to make a difference in our society, millions of people, motivated simply by human compassion, laid down the burdens of division around the country and the world. You set aside race, class, age, language, and nationality to demand respect for human dignity. That is why I had to visit Black Lives Matter Plaza in Washington. Though I was admitted to the hospital the following day, I just had to see it and feel it for myself, that after many years of silent witness, the truth is still marching on. He said, Emmett Till was my George Floyd. He was my Rayshard Brooks. He was my Sandra Bland and Breonna Taylor. He was 14 when he was killed, and I was only 15 years old at the time. I will never, ever forget the moment when it became so clear that he could easily have been me. In those days, fear constrained us like an imaginary prison. Troubling thoughts of potential brutality committed for no understandable reason were the bars. Like so many young people today, I was searching for a way out. Or some may say a way in. And then I heard the voice of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. on an old radio. He was talking about the philosophy and the discipline of nonviolence. He said that we are all complicit when we tolerate injustice. He said it's not enough to just say that it will get better by and by. He said each of us have a moral obligation to stand up, to speak up, and to speak out. When you see something that is not right, you must say something. You must do something. Democracy is not a state. It is an act. And each generation must do its part to help build what we call the beloved community, a nation and a world in which society is at peace with itself. He reminded us that ordinary people with extraordinary vision can redeem the soul of America by getting in what I call good trouble, necessary trouble. Voting and participating in the democratic process are key. The vote is the most powerful nonviolent change agent you have in a democratic society. You must use it because it is not guaranteed. Lastly, he said, you must also study and learn the lessons of history because humanity has been involved in this soul-wrenching, essential struggle for a very long time. People on every continent have stood in your shoes through decades and centuries before you. The truth does not change. And that's why the answers worked out long ago can help you find solutions to the challenges of our time. Continue to build union between movements, stretching across the globe, because we must put away our willingness to profit from the exploitation of others. And he said, though I may not be here with you, I urge you to answer the highest calling of your heart and to stand up for what you truly believe. In my life, I've done all that I can to demonstrate that the way of peace, the way of love, and the way of nonviolence is the more excellent way. But now is your turn to let freedom ring. When historians pick up their pens to write the story of the 21st century, let them say that it was your generation who laid down the heavy burdens of hate at last, and that peace finally triumphed over violence, aggression, and war. So I say to you, walk with the wind, brothers and sisters, and let the spirit of peace and the power of everlasting love be your guide. Let the spirit of Congressman John Lewis, Dr. C.T. Vivian, live within each and every one of us, henceforth, now, and forevermore, for democracy's sake and for our generation's experience of equity. Peace and blessings, family.
Attorney Gerald Griggs.
The fighters. Yes, sir. Hey. Wow. Dr. Vivian and Representative Lewis were my mentors. I sat at the foot of Dr. Vivian for 10 years at the CT Vivian Leadership Academy. And Representative Lewis, we got in good trouble at least 5 times, 5 separate marches. So to be able to speak at this point is an honor. And what I can say to you is the same thing that Dr. Vivian and Representative Lewis said to me so many times. They said that at some point it was going to be on our generation to get into some good trouble, to speak truth to power. And so now that they have gone on to be with the ancestors, we have to pick up the mantle. And you've heard from some of the great young organizers that I've had the pleasure of working with, whether that's Reverend James Woodall, whether that's Reverend Jared Sawyer, or whether that's a young lady who I've known since she was about 5 years old, Mary Pat Hector. And what I can say is this: the future is in great hands, but we have to make sure that we earn the respect of our ancestors and the respect of future generations by doing the work. And so you see the individuals whose faces that are waiting on us and expecting justice, whether that's Breonna Taylor, Rayshard Brooks, Elijah McClain, George Floyd, Sequoia Turner, and so many others, Jimmy Atchison, Oscar Kane, Beltavius Griggs, Deatrick Griffin, just to name a few. And so what I would say on this Saturday in Atlanta, Georgia, the birthplace of the Civil Rights Movement, we must become the cradle of the social justice movement. We must join with our brothers and sisters in Chicago, our brothers and sisters in New York, our brothers and sisters in Louisville, our brothers and sisters in Houston, our brothers and sisters in LA and in Portland, and speak truth to power. Because we have a Sheriff Jim Clark, we have a George Wallace, we have a Bull Connor. So the battles that Dr. Vivian faced, we face. The battles that Representative Lewis faced, we face. Because we face the quintessential threat to our freedom of any age. So let's stop calling the 45th President of the United States anything other than George Wallace. Let's stop calling the governor of this state anything other than Jim Clark. Let's stop playing and let's get real. Many of us will not live to see the promised land, but we're going to get there in this generation, because Dr. King has looked over and seen the promised land, and he's expecting us to get there. Many of us will spend nights in jail, and some of us already have, for freedom. But that's what Representative Lewis said. We got to get in some good trouble. And the good thing about this generation, we got some good lawyers that will get you out of that good trouble. So don't be afraid to speak truth to power. Don't be afraid to call out the powerful, whether that's a mayor, a governor, or a president of the United States. If they are violating the Constitution of the United States, it is our duty to call out injustice. And as one of my mentors who's passed on has said, Dr. King said, it is the duty of the oppressed to break unfair laws. So don't get beside yourself when some of us go to jail. Don't get beside yourself when some of us become martyrs for the cause. Because it's time for us to make America live up to what it says on paper for everybody. It's time for us to make America understand that it was never great in the first place, but we can make it great once and for all. For black folks, for white folks, for gay folks, for straight folks, for church folks, for unchurched folks, and for the legions of people who want to be American citizens. Because this country is supposed to be all of those lofty ideals that the founders, who didn't expect that black people and women and gay people and folks that came over on different ships were supposed to get. But like Representative Lewis said all the time, and I've heard the stories, Jared's heard the stories, Mary Pat's heard the stories, we all came on different ships, but we all in the same boat now. And so when he was 14 years old and he was preaching to those chickens, the chickens paid more attention to him than Congress. So now it's time for us to make Congress pay attention to us. It's time for us to make lawmakers make the right decision and reauthorize the Voting Rights Act. And name it after John Robert Lewis. It's time for us to tell the police unions that we sick and tired of sovereign immunity and qualified immunity. We want to lock some cops up. We want to give some justice to these families. And it's time for us in the city of Atlanta, the birthplace of civil rights, to ask the question, why do black lives not matter here? Why did Ray Shaw's life not matter? Why did Jimmy's life not matter? Why did Oscar's life not matter? Why did Beatrix's life not matter? Why did Alexia's life not matter? We got to speak truth to power. And so what I would say to us is we've gotten our marching orders. I love the beloved community that I'm looking at right now. But the next time we have a protest, call 2 of your friends. Tell them y'all saw the funerals. Y'all heard the messages from 3 former sitting presidents, and one that wrote a letter, and the other one that tweeted. That it's time for America to live up to what America says by honoring John Lewis in the only way that he would care about, and that's legislation. That's legislation that empowers people so the next generation doesn't have to worry about their voting rights. So the next generation doesn't have to worry about their civil rights. So the next generation doesn't have to march across any more bridges, because we tired of marching. So this next march we're going to have is going to be on November the 3rd. We're going to march to the polls. And we're going to kick Bull Connor out of the White House.
That's right.
But not only are we going to kick Bull Connor out of the White House, we're going to make sure the next occupant understands that you can get that smoke too. See, the mistake that we made was we got excited that we had a president. And trust me, he was a great president. But we didn't provide him the cover that he needed by electing a Congress that would follow him and making sure he got his Supreme Court picks and making sure he got a state legislature that would listen to him and governors that would listen to him. So in 2020, we're not making that mistake. A wave is coming. It's the wave for the new millennium. I love my 70 years old and up folk, but it's time for them to give it up. It's time for the young folks to lead. So I leave you with this. These 2 giants of men have rested, and they're expecting giants of men and women to follow in their footsteps and make America be what it says on paper. So I love you guys. I'm going to keep marching with you. But we marching to the polls November 3rd. We got to get Bull Connor out of office. Thank you.
You guys are the best. You've taken time out of your Saturdays to join us, and me, Courtney, all of the organizers here, all the volunteers here, those who are helping from Atlanta filmmakers with the photography and the sound, everybody who's here speaking, we really appreciate you. And as my mask says peace, right? So ever since I was young, I've been kind of a peace activist in my own right, but I feel like, you know, I think of it this way: as long as I have a voice, I will not be silent. And I know that maybe I haven't experienced some of the same injustices that my brothers and sisters in humanity have faced. But that's exactly why I can't be silent. That's exactly why I was inspired to help create an event like this. And that's exactly why I feel so, I just feel, I don't even know the right words to say, but I feel very happy about the fact that people have come together. But we can't stop. We have to keep going. And I'll say this time and time again. Brothers and sisters in humanity. We can't let anything like skin color, our background, the money we make, our education divide us. If you stop and you talk to somebody and just have a 2-minute conversation with them, you'll see that you have so much more in common with somebody, and we use our division so much to incite hate. But we need to incite love. You guys need to find that within yourselves. And I'm not just saying this, to the group here, but just to anybody who might be listening, and anybody that I can reach. I think earlier James was speaking about we might be gone by the time, unity actually happens in this country and beyond. But if I can leave a mark, and if I can say, give peace a chance, and not just say, I want to be able to be somebody who left a mark. And if it's even the smallest ripple in the ocean, I feel like I've done at least that part. And it's still, for me, it's not enough. And that's why I keep going. And that's why, again, I appreciate you guys. And I feel like the more we shed light on topics like these, the more strong we will become together. And again, thank you so much. We're not stopping here. So next time I see you guys, I'll enjoy seeing y'all then too. So thank you.
Thank you.